Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Racing Extra, and Aaron, I'll get you to introduce the guest today.
We've got a young Regan Bayliss, up and coming rider. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, very well.
Regan, welcome along.
Thanks very much.
Mate, before we talk about, obviously us do the form in New South Wales, we're just starting to get a good look at you, but what's your story? I hear you actually came from Queensland to start with, not Melbourne?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Started from Queensland. I was actually born there and brought up there and did all my schooling there.
Yep.
And about when my brother got to the age of 15 and he was old enough to start his apprenticeship, my old man, Jamie Bayliss, he quit his training operation to take us two boys to Melbourne.
Oh, right.
Where the racing's a lot better than Queensland, and that's where Jake started his apprenticeship, and I sort of learnt my skills with Michael Kent to start off with, just following him around the track, and then from there, when I was old enough to start my apprenticeship, I moved to Caulfield with Peter Moody.
Yeah, okay. And you obviously had quite a bit of success down in Melbourne.
Yeah, definitely. It's everything happened quite quickly there. In June, I rode my first winner, my first race ride, and a year later, I got to ride in the Caulfield Cup, which was a great thrill, and got to go overseas and compete in Dubai, and yeah, it was been a crazy ride, and it's happened all so quickly. But I've had some great opportunities from my master, Peter Moody, as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your first winner. Was it a horse that the stable had sort of set up and got it? You also knew it was ready to go, or it just all happened? Yeah,
no, it definitely was. Peter Moody sort of held me back.
Yep.
And made sure I did all my trials, and you know, by the time I was sort of ready to go to the races, I had that many trials and that many jump outs under my belt. I was pretty much ready to go, but he was all about finding that right one, and I wouldn't say it was a sit and steer. It was an Elmer filly first up over a mile, so I sort of had to do a bit of steering, which was good, but it was too good on the day, and yeah, that was a memory that I'll hold for the rest of my life.
And then you just mentioned the Caulfield Cup. Who did you ride in the Caulfield Cup?
I rode a horse called Renew for Archie Alexander, who's a young trainer in Ballarat, but that connection was probably from OTI. I heard the ride was going on the Thursday, Friday after a few scratchings, and I heard that I was in the mix, and then when I got the call up to ride the horse, I couldn't sleep that night. It was probably one of the best highlights of my career so far.
Very exciting day.
Yep. Sure it would be. And now you're obviously up in Sydney. So what made you make the move to Sydney?
Look, the sort of the spring carnival was rolling up, and if I had stayed there, it was just sort of more going to be just picking up the numbers, and you know, this spring so early in my career, and you know, why not sort of go interstate and, you know, test the waters there, but just gain experience. And you know, I went here with no pressure. I've been here a month and a half now, and I've gained so much experience, learnt so much. You know, I feel that my riding's improved, and basically, you know, this time of year everyone's focused in Melbourne, so you know, you can just hone your skills without much pressure, and you know, that's what I've done.
Okay.
You had a little bit of luck when you first got here riding the winner at Regan. What was that like?
Yeah, that was unreal. I actually, probably about 3 months previous, I rode at Regan and rode a double on that occasion for my master, Noel's Joyce and Ken Jewett, but to come here on my stint in the first weekend I was here to win on Dream Choice for Gary Moore, that was very good.
Yeah. And okay, as a punter, and a lot of our viewers are punters, you're just getting the feel for the Sydney tracks for the first time. So let's quickly talk about the two Wednesday tracks that we generally race at, which is Canterbury and Warwick Farm. Or what are the differences that you're noticing at those two tracks? Yeah,
I found they're both tricky tracks, and they can both play, you know, big bias, and you just got to really sort of watch the first couple of races and watch the replays of when those tracks were, you know, when they previously raced there and the rail was out that far, just so you could sort of get a guide on it. I feel Warwick Farm can be very tricky. Some days it can play sort of on pace, you know, probably throughout the whole day, and but like I feel Canterbury is a lovely track, and I feel sort of every horse gets their chance there. You know, obviously I've learnt that you sort of got to tuck around the bend and get cover for as long as you can, and then you can peel out in the straight. If not, sort of you're going to have to ride for luck. But I feel every horse gets their chance there, and no, I'm really enjoying riding at both those tracks.
Okay, and now let's have a chat about Randwick and Rosehill. Both big tracks, but from what we look at doing the form, they're a bit different as well, a lot different.
They can be, yeah, definitely. They can be a lot biased as well. You just, as I said, in Sydney they tend to get off the fence a lot in their tracks here, and when the track gets a bit wet and the rail's out, it can play, you know, big bias as well. So I feel Randwick's a beautiful track, probably the most fairest city track in Sydney, I'd say. You see horses always sit 1, 2, 3, and they can win, or horses can come from middle or last. You know, 2 of my winners at Randwick, they've both come from near on last. So it's a lovely big track. They can balance up, and I feel every horse gets their chance there. And same as Rosehill. Rosehill's pretty much the same. Rails out 6 metres this weekend, which is going to be a little bit tricky. We'll have to see how the first couple of races play. But
I think it's your first time where you've been in Sydney. I think for your first couple of weeks, every time you've rode here, a lot of the tracks have been rain affected or been coming off wet bases.
Okay.
I think this will be Regan's first chance of really seeing what a dry, fast Rosehill track is. You might see horses don't get their chance.
Yeah, well, the position, the three wide at Rosehill is hardly good at any stage. I wonder why. Do you notice, is it more wind exposed Rosehill compared to Randwick around the back, or what's the reason why you can't really beat 3 wide at Rosehill?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Like, I've only ridden there probably about on 3 occasions now, 3 or 4 occasions now. I'm still getting used to the track, but as you said, you can see a lot of horses that sit 3 wide there and struggle that last sort of 200 metres. So, look, I'll be just looking at the replays, and previously when the rail was out 6 metres on a good track, you know, back through the replays there, and we'll see how we can sort of ride my horse best to the track advantage.
Well, we've seen that you've touched on a little bit of you do a little bit of form going in. We've spoken about Brett Navdalla on the show, who seems to do a lot of form these days. Coming up as an apprentice now, how much work do you put in pre-race and doing the form and conducting yourself? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think doing the form's always been one of my key assets, and I think that's what I got over a lot of apprentices is my preparation towards form and all that sort of stuff. I sort of do it thoroughly, and Blake Shin, he's one of my mentors, and as you know, he's a very dedicated on form analysis, and I take a lot of pride into my form. So, you know, there's nothing better than being prepared before you go to the races, and I believe that's one of my key assets.
Okay. And where are you working from Randwick at the moment? Who are you stabled up with?
Yeah, I'm with Peter Moody at Randwick. He's only got 8 horses in work at the moment. As you know, he's shutting down at the end of the month.
Yes, he is.
So I've been doing a lot of track work for Gai Woodhouse, John Sargent, you know, and just mixing it up, John Thompson, and a lot of other different trainers, which is really good, sort of building relationships with all of them.
And well, I guess Peter's leaving. What has he told the staff as to why he wanted to wind that down? Is it the pressures that we've been hearing about elsewhere, or is it just the financials of running 2 stables?
Look, I just think I think he just wants to sort of focus on a quieter number. Obviously, there's a lot of drama going on at the moment, but I think the bold reason, he just wants to sort of cut down a little bit and just focus on that smaller number. As you know, if it 150 horses, 200 horses in work, it can get quite out of control, you know. So I think that's sort of the final reason.
And we can see you popping up on maybe once the stable does finish, you're probably going to stick around in Sydney. Is that the goal?
Look, I'm going back to Melbourne in about 2 weeks' time. I've got a stint in England in March. I'm going there for 8 weeks.
All right.
Under the British Racing School there, so that'll be an unreal experience. And then when I come back there, that's when I'll weigh up my options and see where I want to base myself.
Okay. Just I know you've only really ridden in Sydney in the quiet period with a lot of our leading riders away, but how have you found the difference? Is there any sort of difference to the racing style of Sydney to Melbourne?
Look, Sydney's a lot more competitive in the jockeys room. I must say, you know, everyone's like a hyena. They're that hungry.
Is that right?
Yeah, and look, the racing is a little bit different. Everyone, you know, in Sydney you don't get given an inch. You know, it's so competitive. You know, you got to be so switched on when those barriers open. That's sort of the difference I've noticed from Sydney to Melbourne.
And occasionally the 5-horse fields that you never see in Melbourne.
Yeah, no, exactly, and those races
Tactical.
can actually be the most tactical races. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, look, I think it's been nice for you to sit down with us and introduce yourself to the audience a bit further, which is good.
You've got a good understanding, I think, of Regan.
I do.
And maybe we'll get him back on after his England stint, and if he can boot up a few more winners in Sydney.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on, guys.